this section we are going to show you how to create an unmargined panel. First of all, take your template, bring it into the workshop where it's nice and warm, you've got good light. Using a bit of your masking tape, it's helpful just to fix the edges down so your panel doesn't, your template doesn't move on you. The next thing we have to do is work out where the centre line is. You will have already marked the orientation of the panels. So taking your straight edge, carefully work out exactly where the centre line is going to be. In this case, marking clearly so you don't make any mistakes later on. Sometimes it's a good idea just to take your centre line outside the panel, so when you've laid your strips on, you can still see where it is. Once you have that marked clearly, you can take your roll of material and start cutting the lengths to the right size. We would always advise you cut them a little oversized, because when you weld them together you can then trim the ends nice and neatly to the precise size that you require. So using your anvil cutters, you find that it's quite straightforward. Just cut a few centimetres over the size of your template. Once you've cut all your strips to the slightly oversized length, as you can see here, it's quite a cold day and they are not lying flat. So if you take your hot air gun, and what you need to do is to gently warm them, keeping the hot air gun moving all the time. Don't let it stay on one point too long. Basically just gently warm them through, and you'll find that they'll start to sag and quite quickly go flat. As you can see, once they've had a little warm air, all these strips here have gone nice and flat, and you'll find they're far more manageable to work with. You'll find they all just slot in together very nicely like that. When creating your panel, it's very important to ensure that you keep these all straight. So I'm going to add a straight edge, which is simply going to be clamped to the table, but I'm using the edge of it precisely parallel with the edge of the panel. I'm simply going to use a couple of clamps, one either end, to secure it in position. You can see it's flush with the edge of the template. I can now begin to stick the separate plank together, and that will use a tube of cold weld adhesive. If you look at the cross section of the Re-Teak extrusion, you will find that there are male and female parts to it, as well as the tunnel under section there. When sticking the strips together, it's best to apply the adhesive to the female part along the bottom edge. So when the male part slots in, the adhesive goes right into the channel and tends not to come to the surface, which would interfere with the weld. You remove the stopper, which you'll find has a little piercing section on it. Pierce it, put on the nozzle, and then using a pair of snips, just cut the end very carefully so you have a very small hole there to dispense the adhesive. And then carefully run a bead of the adhesive, not too much, not so it's squelching all over the place, very evenly, straightforward, smooth action down the full length of the plank. Take your next strip and simply slot it straight on the side. And fix them together with just a little bit of a pushing action. You've got your first two strips, and it's simply a case of repeating the operation pushing them together like that. Repeat until you come to the other end of the template. After a short break of around 10 minutes, your panel will now be reasonably strong, ready to proceed to the next section. I've removed the straight edge here, as we don't need it, and you will need to remove your template from underneath, as any use of hot air tools now will cause the template to shrink, and obviously we don't want that. So remove that. You now have your panel, which we can now caulk. What I'm going to show you now is the hand caulking of the panel, which is the alternative method to the hot welded system. As you can see, we've now cold welded all the strips together to create a solid sheet. It's oversized, it's bigger than the template underneath, so at the later date as we progress we can then cut the sheet to the right shape, discarding the edge waste. So what we're going to do now is mask off all the caulk lines. With the Re-Teak product there is a little bit of integral black on both sides of each plank, so the masking needn't be absolutely accurate. You just have to cover it over, quite straightforward. As you can see, there is the channel into which the liquid caulk will be applied shortly. Just proceed along masking the whole of the panel. There we are, and we have now masked the whole of the panel. There are now just the little recesses for the liquid caulk to go into. So you take your caulk gun. In this particular case we're using a larger one because we use it on a more industrial scale. Either way, your nozzle will need a little bit of a trimming. Don't make it too big or make it too small, just cut a little bit off the end, generally at an angle, and then just apply the cork. It will overfill the groove just a little. Try not to leave any voids. All the way along. And proceed all the way till you've come to the last one. Once you've completed applying the liquid cork into all of the grooves, take some piece of plastic, any piece of slightly flexible plastic, and basically use it in a smooth, continuous line right through. You may find that you end up with a little bit of an air bubble in the odd place. Just give it a little bit of a poke with the plastic and then reapply down the line again to get rid of it. Once you've finished your liquid cork and you've wiped all your joints nice and flat, you then have to take the piece and basically put it aside for at least 24 hours to allow the cork to cure. Now 24 hours has elapsed, we can return to the panel that we hand corked earlier and remove the masking tape. What we should get are nice, clean cork lines. What a satisfying sound and feeling just pulling this masking tape off. Once you've removed all the masking tape, what you'll be left with is a corked Re-Teak panel. There may be one or two areas where the cork's feeling a little proud. If you take your chisel or your sharp spatula knife and just run it along, just may cut a little piece off the top here and there where it is sitting a little proud. And once you've completed this, you can take a soft brush, brush the debris off, and at the same time the bristles will take the shine off the cork, giving it a much more pleasing appearance, make it all a little bit more uniform, and you're left with your finished Re-Teak Caulked Panel. You can see it's still oversized, and what we do to complete it is to overlay the template and cut around it, taking care to ensure the centre line in this case is right down the middle of a cork line. However, if the combination wasn't quite right, you could then put the centre line down the middle of the plank to ensure continuity on the edge when you cut it. So position your template carefully, and then using some sort of heavy weight to anchor it. In this case we're using a diver's weight. Just put your template in position, and with your straight edge carefully cut down through the template the first edge. Don't try and cut right through in the first go, because all you'll do is slip. Holding it very carefully in the same position, cut through, and then just rotate the panel without moving the template off the top, and repeat and cut all 4 edges. As you can see here, we've got some rounded edges. We can follow the template with a knife very carefully to complete the rounded edge. If you do that all 4 sides, and then remove the template, and you can find that it's simply a case of using the knife to cut right through the last bit to maintain the shape of your panel. Once you've cut all the way round, you'll find you have now a completed Re-Teak panel. Panel as such, as it stands at this moment, is perfectly adequate for recessed decks such as on the Moody's, because you've got a square edge here. However, if you want to surface mount it, very much like it's sitting on the top of the table here, you may wish to radius the edge. Now that can be done in a variety of ways. You can use a surform or a plane just to whisk the edge off a piece, but what we tend to use is a knife. So to correctly radius edge, using your finger as a guide, just cut about a 45-degree angle, a couple of mil slither, smoothly and uniformly off. Down the edge here. Doesn't matter if it wobbles a little bit, because you can even that out with the sandpaper. Cut an edge down there, and then taking the sanding block, long, smooth strokes all the way down, and all you're doing is sanding yourself a nice radius edge onto the edge of the panel. The beauty of the Re-Teak profile is that it's one profile, one strip, has several purposes. And there you now have a radiused edge for a surface mounted panel. And obviously repeat all the way round, and that's it. And that is your finished Re-Teak panel. It's a hand cork panel with radiused edges, with a unique Re-Teak understructure that prevents lifting in the future once it's been stuck down. The tunnel shaped section there allows the adhesive to enter, and once it's cured, it has a dovetail type action that prevents lifting.